Nowadays, the idea that continents can migrate and shift about isn't shocking at all. We humans had nothing to do with the breakup of the supercontinent Pangaea in the modern-day continents of North America, South America, Africa, and Europe over 300 million years ago. The land just broke apart, evolving into a modern-day continents we recognize. To what extent, though? In what ways, specifically, are we seeing the changes take place? Here in this video, we'll be talking about the behavior of pole shift. Subscribe to this channel if you're ready to take a deep dive into the vast unknown with me as we explore behavior of pole shift. Let's get started. Whenever the entire outer crust of the planet slides simultaneously, like chocolate around a cherry, it causes a pole shift, a global tragedy. While regions near the equator step away from the tropics and into frigid climates, regions near the north and south poles migrate towards the equator by thousands of miles, causing ice caps to melt in warmer latitudes. When once warm regions experience an abrupt drop in temperature, they become the new polar regions and are quickly covered by ice sheets. Low-lying equatorial land is sinking into the Ecuador Bulge as it's pushed towards the equator. Simultaneously, terrain that was previously submerged comes to the surface. Earthquakes and tsunamis can revert space-age civilizations to the Stone Age, and a large enough shift in altitude and latitude can be mistaken for the end of the world. History professors, electrical engineers, and Navy admirals all have produced books about pole shifts. Albert Einstein penned the foreword to a book explaining how the polar regions will shift towards the equator as a result of mass imbalances affecting the Earth's crust. Since the mass always tends to move away from the middle of motion, Sir Isaac Newton predicted that such an imbalance would cause poles to wander around the Earth. Since then, numerous researchers have uncovered proof that pole shifts have occurred in the past and will occur again in the future. Even though he produced multiple volumes on the topic, prominent pole shift theorist Professor Charles Hapgood continued shifting his position and making assertions that seemed to contradict one another when it came to predicting how soon pole shifts may be devastating. He references Ernst Deutsch's Polar Wandering and Continental Drift, in which Deutsch claims that the pole shifts occur very slowly, in his book Path of the Pole. Then he explains how Deutsch discovered proof of a crustal shift in Scotland, thousands of times faster than he expected it to occur. According to Hapgood's article, the pole apparently relocated from its original location to its current one in a lot less time than a millennium. Is there a hidden reason behind not being truthful? At one time, Hapgood stopped being so cautious and began taking chances. He should have known better after working for the CIA's predecessor, the Office of Strategic Services. In a letter to Skyfall co-author Rand Flem-Ath from 1982, Hapgood discussed a new novel he had been writing. Hapgood promised in his letters that his next book would contain groundbreaking new information that would go well beyond the reserved comments of his earlier work. He told Flem-Ath he had an evidence of a whole cycle of civilization in both America and Antarctica, evidence that pointed to advanced scientific achievement. Before publishing his latest work, Hapgood was hit by a car and killed. This may have been because he had discovered information that the government didn't want to be made public. We'll never know if this was just unlucky or maliciously orchestrated. It turns out he wasn't alone in thinking that the pole shift happened instantly and resulted in widespread devastation. One of the author's beliefs, which he explains in Chan Thomas's less well-known book, The Adam and Eve Story, is that Adam and Eve's pulse changed. Since you can't get your hands on the original book, but the CIA did produce a sanitized version, you can imagine how much of the meat of the story was cut out. Thomas showed evidence of an impending movement in Earth's poles, which he said would cause calamity, and he noted that such shifts occur on a cyclical basis. Every once in a while, a natural calamity kills off most of humanity, and we get to start the game all over again. According to him, ours is the sixth advanced civilization to arise on Earth, and there may have been others that were even more so. However, the more one goes back in time, the more difficult it is to prove, partly since some of these civilizations resided on continents that no longer exist. Whatever the case may be, Chan saw the situation clearly and was convinced that the pole will change suddenly, bringing catastrophe with it. The earthquakes will begin with no prior notice, starting as an inaudible rumble and then becoming a deafening roar. However, these tremors will be unlike any other recorded in history. Thomas theorized that after the pole shift, Earth's molten sublayer will break through it and spread out a sea of white-hot liquid fire, because the air and water will remain to spin, but the land masses will cease in many places. In a little period of time, every evidence of human civilization will have vanished. After 6 days of wrathful marching, the seas will begin to calm down, and the North Pole will be where the Bay of Bengal usually is, just east of India, and the South Pole will be where the Pacific Ocean usually is. Greenland and Antarctica, which are currently rotating equatorially, will emerge with luscious tropical greenery as new ice caps begin to form inside the newly formed polar territories. This may seem catastrophic, but it's not the only recent change to cause alarm. The magnetic pole shift is yet another change in the pole, which is only now being discussed by a few. The problem of fading magnetic poles is another scenario we may have to face in the not-so-distant future. The planet would be in serious difficulty if Earth's magnetic field suddenly collapsed and magnetic north became south and south became north. In all likelihood, we are headed in this direction if the trend continues. According to Dr. Nicholas Tuveti of the European Center for Research and Teaching in Environment Geosciences in Essex Province, France, the geometric field has already been weakening for the past 3,000 years, and if it continues to weaken at this rate, humanity will find itself in a critical situation in much less than 1,000 years. Since 2014, Dr. Tuveti has been one of the primary individuals in charge of building project. Together with his colleagues, he has been researching the evolution of Earth's magnetic field. How often has it reversed course, and how often might it do again so? The major thing that allows our planet to have a magnetic field is, indeed, the flow of liquid iron inside of its core. It has always been part of the Earth, but its polarity has changed several times in the planet's history. It can take up to 1,000 years to complete each time it flips, which has happened up to 100 times in the last 20 million years. Using a drill to collect cores or columns of the seafloor that appear like straws that can go down 300 meters, we can look into the past and determine when these changes occurred because of the fossilized magnetization they leave in the rocks on Earth. The history of Earth's magnetic field was studied by Dr. Tuveti and his team, who focused on two different sorts of components. Polarity reversal requires a reduction in magnetic field strength of around 90%. As this process can take thousands of years, our planet is exposed to more high-energy particles from those other parts of the universe in the form of cosmic rays due to its lack of magnetic field. This causes cosmogenic isotopes like carbon-14 and beryllium-10 to precipitate out of the atmosphere. Cosmic rays strike more and more of the atoms in the atmosphere, including nitrogen and oxygen. It sounds easier than it is, because all we have to do is count how many of them are present in the cause to determine whether the polarity shifted. In the time span between 772,000 and 774,000 years ago, the field almost completely reversed. When the field's strength lowers dramatically, but isn't quite at the threshold it must reach before rising again, this is called an excursion. The greatest danger comes when the field weakens to strengthen again. There are indicators that we're on the cusp of going into another expedition, the likes of which have not been seen for about 40,000 years. According to Dr. Tuveti, the geomagnetic field has lost 30% of its intensity in the previous 3,000 years, which is bad news because it means the field will likely be at zero or close to it within the next few hundred or thousand years. If you need further convincing, our satellites in orbit have already detected the effects of a diminishing magnetic field in the Atlantic Ocean between South America and Africa. The South Atlantic anomaly is a huge region where the Earth's magnetic field is around 3 times weaker than near the poles. Technical University of Denmark professor Chris Finlay is leading a project that is investigating this. Several satellites, including 3 swarm satellites launched by the European Space Agency in 2013, are being used in this to research the SAA's root cause. Professor Finlay is aware of this region as a hotspot for electronic failures in satellites, but he and his colleagues are at a loss to explain the origins of this region's weak field or predict how it might evolve in the future. Since its discovery by scientists in the 1950s, the SAA has shifted westward and lost another 6% of its power. Not even Professor Finlay or his research group has come up with a good explanation. He also noted that scientists have been unable to foresee how it would evolve in the future. The project aims to rectify this by collecting and analyzing the most comprehensive data sets available on Earth's magnetic field and its evolution over time. The group's investigation of SAA is motivated by desire to learn more about what is going on in the center of the planet. It's possible that the magnetic field is being diverted away from the South Atlantic region due to the presence of massive anticyclone inside the southern part of Earth's liquid metal outer core. A little reversal in polarity could also be caused by the magnetic field here being detected in the wrong direction. Many spacecraft have also reported electronic problems when flying over the area due to cosmic rays, so the SAA provides a direct look at how a weaker magnetic field can affect satellites. However, it's not yet clear if the SAA has anything related to the reversal of Earth's magnetic field, so Professor Finlay and his team will also investigate this. It is not necessary, but it would not be surprising if something such as this was engaged in a magnetic reversal. As he stated, in some simulations you might observe things like the SAA expanding when the poles switch. However, the SAA may provide some insight into what is to come in the not-too-distant future. If things continue as they are, the Earth's magnetic field may flip again in 1,000 or 2,000 years, and the field may continue to worsen, causing significant issues for humanity as soon as the next century. Even said, Dr. Tuveni did add that the weakening of the geomagnetic field is far more significant and striking than the reversing of the poles. He's confident that knowing whether or not existing field will disappear entirely during the next century is crucial in order to prepare for the future. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, let us know in the comments section. Also, at last, give a like to this video. See you soon.